G'day everyone, Black Myth Wukong has been out for about a month now, and after spending literally hundreds of hours playing the game and making detailed guides on all the harder bosses, I have compiled my ultimate list of tips and tricks. This will be more useful to beginners and people still playing through the game, but even those of you who finished the game or playing NG+, might get a few nuggets and tidbits of information you didn't know. Spoiler alert, I will be mentioning and showing clips of a bunch of stuff from throughout the game, such as bosses, areas, side quests, or items. I won't be talking about the story or go into great detail on anything, but I will be pointing things out so you can either go look up a guide yourself or experience it yourself for the first time and figure it out. So in no particular order, here's 45 tips to get you through Black Myth Wukong. So starting off with some less obvious features about our spells, you can use Rock Solid to remove Poison and Scorchbanes. It does nothing to remove Thunderbane unfortunately, and it will work for the Frost build-up, but once you're frozen and it's too late. This is just a good bit of defensive utility to keep in mind, especially during chapters 4 and 5 where there's lots of Poison and Scorch. While I'm on the topic, Rock Solid is also a hard counter for any of those annoying shield-bearing enemies. There's a bunch of them in chapters 2, 4 and 5. Just a single Rock Solid deflection will delete their entire shield fully, and you can just attack them normally after that. Now, Spellbinder snapshots your current mana and converts 16% of that into damage, which will remain for the rest of that life or rest and won't change. So it's important that you max your mana before using Spellbinder with Curios, passive spirits or potions, and then you can swap them all back and you won't lose any of that damage. For example, before using Spellbinder, you could load up on 3 Thunderflame Seals and the Gorai Doused Spirit, which all give max mana. You can even use the Essence Decoction Medicine to temporarily increase your max mana right before you use Spellbinder, and you're essentially converting a temporary mana increase into a semi-permanent damage increase. I do say semi-permanent because it is only till that next rest or death. Activate Spellbinder to convert that mana into damage, and then you can swap all your Curios and Spirits back to things that give you damage or crit chance, offensive stats, right? One of the best examples of this is using Non-Able, because its drawback is normally that it loses max mana, but once you've already converted it, it doesn't matter, and you can get all those really nice offensive stats. You won't want to use this all the time when running around, but for those hard bosses, this can really help. Next, a lot of people in the comments of my boss guides hadn't realized that you can drink your gourd or flask during Cloud Step without breaking it. This makes Cloud Step your best panic button. You can use Cloud Step in an emergency, the boss will keep hitting your illusion, and you can just drink away and get back to full health. Doing this synergizes really nicely with the Breath of Fire Soak, which increases the damage of your next unveiling strike when you drink. Speaking of a panic button, make sure you understand that transformations have a separate health pool, so you can use them offensively to be reckless and do a lot of damage, but you can also use them defensively if you're in trouble, or if you know there's a bunch of damage coming out that you're not particularly good at dodging. Don't forget to use your staff spin for boss projectiles. I can't tell you the amount of times that I was trying to dodge something that was easily avoidable just by staff spinning. For example, you can spin these little lightning orbs on Yellowbrow, or these golden projectiles on the 100-Eyed Taoist. Speaking of staff spin, it's not just to deflect projectiles. You can make the most of the fact that it hits really rapidly to maximize the benefits on hit passives. For example, the Earth Wolf Spirit and the Prayer Beads Curios both give increased focus on hit, and so by using staff spin offensively, you can generate a lot of focus very quickly and absolutely maximize the use of your heavy attacks. The same idea works really well with the Golden Armor set. By using staff spin offensively to get lots of crits, you can reset the cooldown on your spirits and vessels very quickly. The Composure skill allows multiple dodges consecutively between light attacks while still continuing the light attack chain. That's useful, but what's even better is that it allows you to break the 4th light attack early and still get to the 5th light attack, which is the most powerful and does the most stance damage. This is really useful because that 4th light attack is the longest animation by far and you're quite vulnerable while you're doing it. Instead, I recommend getting into the basic habit of breaking that 4th light attack early by dodging backwards nearly immediately, and then you can still use the 5th light attack to close the gap and leap back in to do that big bit of damage. You'd be shocked at how often you avoid an attack as well by dodging backwards on that 4th light attack. Give it a go and get into the habit of doing it. In the same vein, some spirits, such as Non-Able or the Wolf Spirit, can actually be used in between light attack combos, and the light attack combo will keep going where you left off. I really like using the Wolf Spirit for this because it also has a kind of evasion maneuver as part of its moveset, and so you can do 4 light attacks, Wolf Spirit into the 5th light attack. Really effective. Now, when deciding what spirit to use, keep in mind that their permanent passive trait is a large part of their value. You don't use them that often because it takes a while to build the chi back up, so you should be choosing them as much for the passive as you are for the active ability. As you upgrade them, their passive effect also gets stronger. As you've seen there, the Tiger Acolyte's critical strike damage went from 6% to 10% after I upgraded it. A simple but really important piece of advice is to actually open your stats panel to see the detailed breakdowns to understand what all these considerable or significant or slight increases are and what they're actually doing. And these keywords like moderately are only a bracket as well. They're not all exactly the same. For example, the moderate defense increase of rough skin in the survival tree is actually less than the moderate increase of steadfast in the transformation tree. And you only find that out by opening your detailed stats and having a look. Make sure in chapter 2, you use the Wandering Right Spirit skill on this wall here to break it down so you can go through and get the Lung scale. This is really easy to miss if you don't know about it, but it is important because it unlocks 4 unique bosses, the Lung bosses, which give you access to a range of weapons and items and spells and so on. Once you've got the Lung scale, go back to this waterfall here in chapter 1, and then you can go to this waterfall here in chapter 2 as well, both of which have a secret boss behind them. You'll then find more bosses in chapter 3 and 4 that will be fightable because of this scale. Absolutely one for the beginners here, but remember to use your incense trail item that you start the game with to fast travel. This will zip you back to your previously used shrine, and then from there you can fast travel to wherever you want. This is really useful just to avoid doubling back and going over the same area you've run twice, or when you're farming and things like that. Remember throughout the game to go back and upgrade your permanent celestial medicines with mind cores at the Zoo Dog NPC. These are permanent stat upgrades that you can access once you've done the Zoo Dog quest in chapter 2. So make sure you look that up if you've missed it, and then remember to actually go back to him throughout the game as you loot more mind cores from enemies in different chapters. On that note, mind cores can be farmed if you're looking to do that. Some of the common farming spots are these big rats with the shields in chapter 2, or these blind monks all over this temple in chapter 3. You can look up guides specifically for mind core farming. In the same vein, make sure you go back throughout the game and upgrade your gourds and drinks at the Shen Monkey. Another tip is that icons for NPCs show up in your travel menu. For example, if you're going back to find the Shen Monkey, you can see here that Bamboo Grove has a little icon, and then Marsh of the White Mist has the Shen Monkey's face there. So you can use that to find your NPCs when you're going back to them. Upgrading your gourd at the Shen Monkey requires awakened wineworms and fragrant vines. So keep an eye out for these 2 particular things in the open world. These, like big wine barrels or gourds, whatever they are, those will have the awakened wineworms in them. And these trees here with the glowing yellowish looking vine on them, those are the fragrant vines. There's only a limited number of these, so keep an eye out for them and definitely get them when you see them. Keep in mind that exploring and going back over areas can be really beneficial. For example, the Stranded Lung's Whisker is a soak that you won't often find if you're going through the game normally. You have to go back to Mirrormere after you've fought the dragon on the ice, and then run out over the ice like this, and to the far back right you'll find a little chest with the Stranded Lung's Whisker soak in it. In the same way you can reignite your sparks, you can also reignite and reset your Great Sage relics, so keep that in mind, and you can also reset your celestial medicines at the Zoo Dog. It's worth noting though that when you reset your celestial medicines, you won't get back the will that it cost you to buy them all. So you will waste a bunch of will, but you'll get all the mind cores back. Some basic advice for the beginners: use your medicines and pills more often. I bet you spend the whole game picking up all these damn materials everywhere, but half of you never use them, so start using them. Even just on bosses, your ginseng pills and your basic crit and damage pills, just pop them all at the start of fights. If you liked the game, consider playing NG+. NG Plus actually has a bunch of unique unlocks, equipments, weapons, and mechanics or spells that you can't access in the base game. So there is a little bit of new stuff that makes the experience just that little bit different to play through again. A subtle mechanic that you may not have noticed is that you're actually dodging in sets of 3. So those first 3 are very fluid, whereas after that third one, there's a slightly longer recovery time. So if you're getting caught out with attacks after that third one, consider breaking up your dodges. Another really important one for the beginners, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to do all the side quests that you encounter. Most of the side quests give you access to entirely new secret areas, as well as a whole range of equipments and items and spells, in particular the vessels which you get from all the secret areas, which are really important for a number of the end bosses. If you can't be bothered with side quests and you would normally just skip them, I definitely recommend looking up a guide for them because they are important and they add a lot to the game. For example, at the very least, you must finish the Chen Lung side quest in Chapter 3 to gain access to the NPC village. This not only co-locates all of your NPCs for medicine and gourd upgrades, but it also gives you access to the Yin Tiger, which is the first point in the game where you can upgrade armor. So you can actually keep using all the set passives that you liked from earlier on in the game and upgrade them to be relevant to the current level of difficulty. Many of the armor sets also get new passives and traits as you upgrade them to mythic level. You can see a few of them here on screen, indicated by the little double arrow thing. While I mentioned the Yin Tiger, another thing to note is that you can challenge and defeat the Yin Tiger to unlock a third curio slot. This is obviously a bit of character power that you can't access any other way, so I definitely recommend doing it. What's cool is you can also challenge him again in each New Game Plus to unlock another curio slot. I think you can get up to like 5 or something. Once the Zoo Dog has moved to the new NPC village, you can go to him and request medicine, and come back every now and then after a few rests, and you can get more medicine from him just for free, which is kind of cool. Here's an important one. Jumping upstairs or ramps instead of running is much faster. Just to be clear, this is completely useless other than saving a few seconds here and there, but hey, if we're going to question the value of trivial improvements to our game, then what are we all doing here? But an actually useful jump related tip is to use heavy attack after a jump to clear slightly higher jumps. This is actually really useful to access a whole bunch of slightly higher ledges and even all those annoying enemies that are shooting you from a platform just slightly too high to jump to normally. While I'm on the topic, if you do a light attack after jumping, this will kind of bounce you in and out, and you can follow that up with a heavy attack. This is really useful if you're getting overrun because it's actually just a really good way to avoid the enemy and kind of move in and out. Something you might not have realized is that the game does have random loot drops from mobs just throughout the world. Some examples of this is the See No Evil headgear from Blind Monks, which improves your perfect dodge, or the legendary curio, the Tiger Tendon Belt from the Snake Sheriffs. These have low percentage drop chances and you might have to farm them a bit, but they do exist. For example, the See No Evil pairs really well with the 2 set of the Gale Guard piece. And the Tiger Tendon Belt is fantastic if you like to do those see-through attacks. Something to be aware of is that many bosses in the game actually recognize and respond to certain spells when you use it against them. So it can be a bit of a double-edged sword sometimes. The best example of this is when Yellowbrow turns golden when you try to immobilize him, or he even turns your duplicates against you, right? In these cases, you might want to consider either not using that spell or swapping it out for Spellbinder. A couple of rapid-fire boss tips just relating to our vessels in case you hadn't realised that they were kind of designed for certain bosses. You want to use the Fireproof Mantle in Chapter 1 for the Black Bear Guy, the end boss of Chapter 1, just because of all the fire on the ground and all his fire attacks. The Wind Chime that you get from the secret area of Chapter 2, that's for the Yellow Wind Sage. Use it on him towards the end of his health when he goes into that final whirlwind, and you'll remove all the wind attacks. The Weaver's Needle that you get from Duskvale in the secret area of Chapter 4, you want to use that against the end boss of Chapter 4, the 100-Eyed Taoist. You can see a bit of a pattern here, they're all kind of for those end bosses. This needle, when he goes into that big transformation form at about 30% of his health, you want to use the needle and it'll kill all those little eyes in the sky. When you get the Plantain Fan after Chapter 5, you want to use this for the Supreme Inspector when he does the Ring of Fire around you in the last phase, and you can also use him for Erlang to kill his kind of defense or stance bar. Really, really useful there. It's also just generally useful to CC bosses for a few seconds. A couple of unique boss interactions. For the Stone Vanguard in Chapter 2, if you've collected the 6 Buddha Eyes side quest, you can actually summon this kind of stone Buddha Eye looking boss rock thing here, and that's a boss of itself, the Shigandan. And that will actually fight the Stone Vanguard and kill him for you, and then you can finish off the other one. When you encounter the Venom Doused in Chapter 4, he's up in this big cocoon-looking thing which you can attack. You need to equip a weaker weapon and attack him until you knock off all 4 of those extra arms on his back. If you do this and then kill him, you'll unlock the Venom Braces, which are a unique and very powerful item that you can't get otherwise. Just note, you can't get the top 2 arms off. There's 6 in total. You want to knock the bottom 4 off. If you haven't done this and he's getting low, just die and restart. I guarantee it's worth it. It's a really good item. Another 2 really basic tips here. The meditation points are really important. They basically give you a free spark point, which is a free spark point above whatever your level is. So you should get them all. If you've missed some, go ahead and Google them. It is worth going back and getting them. You should also make sure that you periodically sell all the little bits of gold at the vendors. You'll have a buy and sell option. Go in and just sell them all. They have no other use, and you should just get that will so you can use it on other things like upgrading spirits or whatever. Just a quick clarification on your different resources. So you have mana, chi, and might. Mana is used for all your spells, so your immobilizers, your cloud steps, your rock solid, as well as your pluck of many, right? So all your spells use mana, and mana does not regenerate itself by default. There are different flasks or drinks or whatever that can do this, but by default, your mana does not regenerate. Chi is the resource responsible for your spirits and your vessels. Now, this generates by just fighting people, right? So it will regenerate throughout a fight, and just hitting enemies generates more chi. There are also passives that increase the amount that you generate, but in general, just hit things and you'll get chi. And finally, might is the resource for your transformations only, right? And this is essentially a cooldown. It is a resource, but it is basically just a timer. You have a set or a default might regeneration rate. You can make this regeneration rate quicker with different curios, passive spirits, or spark points in the skill tree there for transformations, but Even then, it's a set amount and fighting more or whatever won't make it quicker, so you can essentially just think of it as a cooldown. Just some advice for early spark points. If you are really new and wondering where you should put them, I would prioritize your stamina tree, which benefits your stamina, your evasion, and your dodges. There's a couple of really important points like composure, which really help. I'd probably put no more than 4 spark points into that left-hand column of the martial tree, which is just for some light attacks and finishes. And then your staff stances is probably the most important. You could even do this first, because getting to 20 points for level 2 and 3 focus points is really important and will unlock quite a lot of combat options for you. When you first start playing, if you are new, consider going into your settings and making a few changes. Auto switch lock on, auto lock on when attacking, and auto target when attacking are all kind of changed the way you play a little bit. Everyone who plays Souls-like has different preferences. Just go in and play around with them. I won't tell you one way or another. One thing I definitely do recommend is turning on damage numbers, because without them you don't have that immediate feedback loop of, oh, how much is this spirit hitting for, or whatever like that, right? So it actually gives you an idea of what you're doing, and it means you can actually compare different builds with a little bit of detail. All right, and somehow finally, but certainly not least, is that those little green charges of will around the world, those restore your gourd charges depending on how many little wisps of green will there are. Right, so drink your gourd before you pick those up, and for the ones that give you like a boss spirit, those restore the entire gourd, so feel free to guzzle down. Alright, and that's it everyone. If this video helped, please like, comment, or subscribe. It does help me out a heap. I hope even if you're new or played this a bunch, I hope you got something out of this that you didn't know, or has helped you on your playthrough. Thanks for listening everyone. Cheers.